Welcome to the Vegan Family Kitchen podcast. Today we are going to talk about anti-inflammatory cooking with Linda Tyler. Hi Linda, so good to have you in my little kitchen here.
Great to see you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. Linda is the creator of GraciousVegan.com and also the author of the just recently published book, Plant-Based Anti-Inflammatory Cookbook. So we're going to go into great depth about what exactly anti-inflammatory cooking means and looks like and how you can implement it at home. She teaches plant-based cooking classes for Portland and Mount Hood community colleges in Oregon, but by the way, those classes are largely online, I think, so other people can sign up too. In addition to cooking classes, she offers one-on-one plant-based lifestyle coaching through the Portland Community College. You may have seen her work already in vegan magazines and websites, including Chef AJ Live, and it is a pleasure to have you here today, Linda. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I would like to start with some storytelling about your journey, but not only your plant-based journey, but your anti-inflammatory cooking journey, because not everybody wakes up one morning and decides, I'm going to write a cookbook about anti-inflammatory cooking. How did you get there? What's the story?
Well, I have been a vegetarian since my college days. Then I became a vegan a couple decades later than that. Then I went to a conference in 2015 and learned about healthy plant-based cooking. So that's, getting to be 10 years ago. And I started reading more and more about health issues and how eating and health are so related, and the research is just blossoming about those topics the last 20 years. So there's so much to read. I started volunteering for nutritionfacts.org for Dr. Michael Greger. So I learned a lot there and have read his books especially. And I kept seeing the topic of inflammation come out. So, Dr. Greger started with How Not to Die, the 15 leading causes of death in the U.S. and what the mechanisms are behind those diseases and how diet influences that. And inflammation was implicated in a number of the chronic diseases that kill so many people. And then he did How Not to Diet, and what do you know? Inflammation was there again, that inflammation and excess body fat have an unfortunate vicious cycle that they reinforce each other, and inflammation then can cause other metabolic diseases. And then he started publishing things on aging, and I became familiar with inflammaging, which is, the tendency as we age for inflammation to increase in our bodies. And so that's when it especially became personal. But, I have heart disease in my family tree and cancer. And so a lot of diseases that are related to inflammation. So the other thing I found was, as I looked at websites about what is inflammation, they were pretty unclear to me. And, I read a lot and have a research background. And so I thought, well, maybe this is my chance to explain things clearly and use ingredients that seem to help fight inflammation and sort of put it all together. So that's when I decided to propose an anti-inflammatory cookbook.
You have opened the door for me and I will walk right in. What is inflammation? Please, it's been such a buzzword in the plant-based community and possibly in, the health conversation at large. So please put some clarity into this. What is inflammation? What does it do to us? Why is it a problem?
Yeah, and of course, some people really suffer from inflammation caused by autoimmune conditions and allergies. But we are all, subject to inflammation. And so it does behoove all of us to understand it better. So inflammation is essentially the result of our immune system doing its job. So our immune system, ironically, is the source of inflammation. And so if you start with a basic situation like we get exposed to a flu virus, the flu virus enters our body through the respiratory system, or maybe through something we touched, and then we touched our mouth or something, and it gets in, and immune cells start to attack it. And when immune cells attack anything, um, a bunch of chemical processes start happening. So the immune cells release proteins, and they're called cytokines, and those go throughout the body. They create more, they get more immune cells to come to the site of the problem. And then they also cause nearby blood vessels to swell and to become more permeable. So more blood can get to the region, and more fluids can get into the tissue to help clean it up. And then those immune cells start to, basically absorb and fight in this case of the flu virus. And so they start to, eat those molecules. And then there might be waste or any kind of cleanup that needs to happen. So there are other specialized immune cells that do that. So the result of all that is like more activity, more blood, more fluid, and some of those proteins, like they hit the nerve cells. So that's where we get the pain and the swelling and the redness and the warmth. That's inflammation. But it's our immune system doing its job. So if our immune system is doing something we're happy about, like fighting the flu, we put up with the sore throat and, the pain and other things that happen to us, side effects of the immune system doing its job. But when it's a chronic situation like autoimmune, where the immune system just keeps attacking our joint linings, or when it's allergies and we don't know what we're allergic to, and it just keeps attacking and attacking because it thinks those are invaders. Or in the case of excess body fat actually releases pro-inflammatory triggers, and the immune system just keeps attacking that. Or in the case of arterial plaque, cholesterol on our arterial arteries, the immune system doesn't like that. That's an irregularity. It's not supposed to be there. So the immune system starts to attack. So not only are our arteries coated with cholesterol, but they're also swollen. And so that's constricting them further. So in all cases, the immune system is doing its job, but in some cases it's overdoing its job, either because it's mistaking things for as being harmful, or we're introducing things into our bodies like food particles or plaque or excess body fat that during evolution really wasn't part of the human condition. And so it's this new stuff that the immune system wants to fight against, and it brings its immune response, which means the result is inflammation.
So help me understand something. Are there foods that are actually, like, is it the food that is the direct cause of inflammation? Like, you rub it inside your body and it causes inflammation? Or is it what the food does to us? For example, let's say somebody who is gaining weight from eating the standard American diet and so forth. So it's because you were mentioning the fat being part of the inflammation vicious circle there. So which is it? Or both?
Right. That's
Maybe.
a great question. Is food a direct
Right.
cause, or is it an indirect cause? And it's actually both. So in the case of what are called endotoxins, which I found out about, they are these really toxic molecules that hide out in bacteria in meat and other animal products. And even cooking the meat and digesting the meat with stomach acid does not kill these endotoxins. So once they're in your system, they're in their system. They're in your system. And the saturated fat in meat and dairy also happens to make our gut leakier. And so those endotoxins can actually get into the bloodstream and cause a lot of inflammation, because the immune system just goes crazy and wants to attack those. And in another way, like saturated fat and excess sugar and refined grains like white flour, white rice, those also directly cause free radicals. So lots of these unstable oxygen molecules in our body. And those are inflammatory. The immune system wants to calm those down and repair the damage that they cause in our body. So the immune system directly reacts to those unstable free radicals. And then, as you say, there are all these indirect causes, like a diet may cause plaque on the arteries, a diet may cause excess body weight. So it's both.
I see. Okay, that's really helpful. So, what you're saying is that what we eat matters.
It matters a lot. In fact, changing what you eat is probably the best defense against excess inflammation. Yes.
Okay, so what is it that is to be avoided? Let's start there, because sometimes it's maybe easier to have a clear target on the things to eliminate, and what should we be picking instead? What are those foods that make a
Yeah.
difference?
Yeah. So, overall, a plant-based or plant-centered diet in like 40 research studies has shown that a plant-centered diet is much better for inflammation than a standard American diet. Um, as far as the research that exists right now shows that saturated fat seems to have quite an effect on inflammation. So that would be the first thing to focus on, as well as these endotoxins I talked about and processed carbohydrates. So sugars and white flour and such. So the saturated fats and the sugar, they just create an environment of oxidative stress, these unstable molecules that really set off the immune system. So, most meats, cheeses are quite strong in saturated fat, milk, cream. And that means restaurant, eating out is just a quote recipe for more inflammation, because almost any place that offers takeout is going to use a lot of oil with some saturated fat, cheeses, of course, the meat itself. And the butter that they use, butter is very high in saturated fat. Even, vegan margarines and vegan shortenings are very high in saturated fat. So, restaurants are basically a minefield unless you ask for something that's very, very simple at restaurants. So the more you can cook at home and avoid these triggers, the better. And as far as the foods that are great, whole plant-based foods, so beans and other legumes and whole grains that still have their bran on them, and lots of vegetables, lots and lots of fruits, and nuts and seeds have omega-3s that are so helpful. So that in general is the diet. And then the research has shown certain ingredients to be even better at fighting inflammation. Garlic and turmeric and ginger, green and black tea. There's a phytonutrient called anthocyanins that creates the dark purple, dark black, dark red hue on berries and cherries and apples and eggplants and black quinoa and black beans. So anything that's dark has those anthocyanins that are super helpful. Then there's a family of flavones that celery and apples are part of that family. And then cruciferous vegetables and all kinds of high fiber foods are really helpful for keeping the gut healthy, because our gut microbiome, if it goes into imbalance and has a lot of bad, microbiome bacteria in it, it can let a lot of things into the bloodstream, and the immune system, there's a lot of immune cells that line our intestinal tract, and the immune cells start to react to all that badness that's in there if it gets out of balance. And that, again, as soon as the immune system reacts, we get inflammation. So fiber, cruciferous, dark leafy greens, and then those specialized foods that just have these different kind of compounds that really help to lower inflammation.
Something you mentioned about saturated fats has been a question that's often brought up to me. Um, Obviously, the main culprits for saturated fats are animal foods, meat, you've mentioned butter, but there are some plant sources of saturated fat as well. Are they also a problem?
I don't know if you're referring to coconut and coconut
For
oil
example,
and
yeah, that's the main
palm
one I had in mind.
oil. Yeah. So I avoid coconut oil and coconut cream and high fat coconut milk because of the saturated fat. Now there still is some research. I feel like the research is not complete on coconut milk because there does seem to be something for populations that eat a lot of coconuts and coconut milk. There is not the health impact that you would anticipate for eating that much saturated fat. So I feel like there's still something missing from that puzzle. But for me, I still don't want to eat that much saturated fat just because I don't
Right.
know yet. But I do know that the research is somewhat mixed and they haven't quite squared the results in terms of looking at populations that do eat a lot of coconut as part of their sort of native diet.
Right. I'm betting they use a lot of coconut with a lot of vegetables, probably,
Yeah,
and also lots of fruit. And if there's
yeah,
also fewer of those endotoxins, it probably helps. But
right.
I appreciate the precautious approach there. It makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So, how, on a day to day basis, what does that look like? What is somebody going to be eating if they want to eat an anti inflammatory plant based diet?
Yeah, so there are a lot of simple ways to get some of these anti inflammatory superstars, as I call them, into your diet. So, one would be eat a big salad at some point during the day, and the salad should not be iceberg or lettuce or just romaine lettuce. Use some dark leafy greens in there. If you can find baby kale, it's not as curly and chewy as regular kale, so find some baby kale. Arugula, spinach, any kind of raw dark leafy green is great to integrate into it. Also, shredded cabbage, because that is a cruciferous vegetable. Or I even buy a bag of broccoli slaw each week and just put some of that in my salad too, because broccoli is cruciferous vegetables. So if you can, make a nice salad, I usually try to make a salad and put it in a big bag so it lasts 3 or 4 days, so I don't have to make it every day. And then I make homemade dressing that doesn't contain oil, and so I sort of don't have to do it every day. I try to do some prep cooking there, and then I try to have an apple every day. That's easy, a red skinned apple. And then I try to have berries every day. Berries are super great. It's easy to get a little handful of nuts. Omega 3s are great for helping to control inflammation. So not too many, especially if you're, trying to maintain your current weight or lose weight. You don't want to overdo the nuts because they're calorie dense. Nuts and seeds. I use tahini in most of my salad dressing recipes, so I do get some seeds there as well. And when you can maybe batch cook some brown rice, either use canned beans, low sodium canned beans, or bake up. I mean, use the pressure cooker to make up a batch of beans and keep those in the fridge. So you could use beans on your salad as well if you like that. So, there's a lot of ways to do that. And of course, most of the recipes in the book are recipes for a nice dinner entree or a breakfast, hot breakfast cereal that has extra flavor and has some ginger in it. So anytime I can use ginger, I use ginger. Anytime I can use turmeric and garlic, I use them. So but you can sort of plan on daily habits of 4 or 5 things that are anti-inflammatory that can just become, something you always do, and you're filling your day with anti-inflammatory superstars.
Those are just such good tips and ideas, and I'm coming over for lunch so we can have a big salad together. I also
Yes.
love that broccoli slaw tip. You mentioned earlier restaurant food, and it made me think of one of my clients. Actually, she's a member of my weekend batch cooking club. So every other week we get together on Zoom and we do some batch cooking and do the sorts of things that you're talking about, preparing some grains, preparing some beans, preparing a dressing, maybe stuff like that, cooking, starting a soup in the slow cooker. And she was emailing me to excuse herself because she's going to miss this weekend. She's going to be visiting family. And she said, "Can you believe this? Of my whole family, I'm the only person who cooks for herself, and all of the other ones rely on restaurant food all the time."
Wow.
And she didn't say so much, but I can imagine they look at her like she's an alien. How is it still,
Yeah.
how quaint, someone who
Yeah.
cooks. And so I'm thinking about all of those people that clearly, the restaurant business is still a hard business, but the food delivery apps and all of those are doing very well. And it's become now a very big component of so many people's diet. So when those people are listening to you and me thinking about, home cooked meals, well, that is lovely, but how in the world is this going to happen? Do you have any tips for them to just get started, to shrink the change so that it seems like it's accessible? Because it's a very big step to go from eating out most of the time, and also the food is it's like fireworks in your mouth. Food from
Yeah.
restaurant, I think the saturated fat in particular has this capacity to amplify all of the other flavors. So how can someone just get started with eating more homemade, wholesome, anti-inflammatory food?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have some one-on-one students who never learned to cook when they were growing up, and really haven't learned how to use a knife, don't know which kind of knives to have. When we start cooking, they have this like horrible cutting board. It's like, no wonder you hate to cook. Your cutting board's like sliding all over and it's flimsy. And so, I try to get them to, here's some inexpensive but good knives. Get a cutting board that's sturdy and won't, slip around. Finding a source that will tell you just some basic equipment is good. And then watching, one of the 1,000 videos on knife skills is good as well. So you can, just do some basic skills. And then I would think about easy foods that you like. Like if you like oranges, buy oranges. If you like grapefruits, buy grapefruits. Apples, carrots. They sell baby carrots. So many things that are easy to eat, easy to make. They sell those beautiful clamshells of salad greens. Some of them 50% dark leafy greens. Get those. If you don't want to make your homemade dressings yet, just buy as healthy a dressing as you can and use that in moderate amounts. And so take advantage of the whole foods there are. I get a little frustrated when people just repeat that truism, shop the perimeter of the store. There's a ton of unhealthy food on the perimeter of the store. High fat dairy and meat for one, but then lots of stuff that the the fresh prepared foods that the stores sell are just as bad as some of the takeout places. So be wary of those two. Just because they're selling them fresh and prepared doesn't mean that they are healthy either. So,
Yep.
Use your common sense and really hang out in the produce department and see how much produce you can buy that you feel comfortable with. If you have a microwave, you can bake potatoes, just poke some holes in it with a fork or a knife so it doesn't explode. Otherwise, 3 or 4 minutes, see if it's soft. If it's not, put it back in for another minute or two. So there's lots of very easy ways to start, you know, transitioning most of your diet over to, you know, plant-based. And then for main dishes for quote learning to cook or learning to cook recipes, if you have anybody, a friend or a family member who knows how to cook, see if you can cook with them and learn how to make a recipe if it's daunting to you. You know, sometimes I again, when I'm with my students, they're not reading the recipe closely enough. So just read it really closely, and usually the answer that you want is there. And so if it's a good recipe, the person will explain it well. And you know, just aim to find like 5 recipes that you can learn and make again and again. Then once you feel good there, learn 5 more. So you don't have to learn to cook anything, just learn to cook some things that you would like. So if it's spaghetti sauce, or you'd love to make your own hummus and you would eat it more if you had some, or you really want to make enchiladas, or I really encourage people to start with soups. You know, bean soups are so easy. And a lot of people have instant pots. They just, it's like in the garage or in a cupboard that they haven't opened in a while. I'm always surprised how many people do have instant pots. Some have no idea how to use them, some do. So you know, the instant pot is totally your friend, and slow cookers too. I'm not a slow cooker person, but you know, it's just kind of the opposite of the instant pot. It just takes a long time, but it's still put everything in, turn it on, walk away. And
Yep.
you don't have to pre-soak all that. And there are really simple, like on my website, I have a pinto bean soup recipe that's super simple, like 5 ingredients. And you just put them in the instant pot, close it, 30 minutes, wait a while, wait a little bit after it's done, release the steam, and then add a little vinegar, and you're done. So
Yes.
see if you can find some easy dishes, and I guarantee you will start to love the taste. So it does take a little, you know, determination, but really it can start with just loving what you already love, that can be made healthy in a healthy way.
And I love how you emphasize at the beginning, you know, if you like oranges, eat oranges or apples or blueberries. Those are not things you need to cook, right? And
Right,
even if you eat your normal diet, but you start
right.
eating a bunch of oranges on top of it, well, you're probably going to eat less of your normal food. And you're
Right.
getting something, at least for starters. And then, yeah, I'm with you on the soup. I think soups are completely underrated. They're so good. Every time I make soup, I'm like,
Yes,
this is amazing. I'm so glad when
I
there's a
know.
big pot of soup that I made in the weekend that I
Right.
can enjoy throughout the week as lunches. And I love my instant pot too, but I have to say for many beginners, the slow cooker is just so easy. You just put things in and turn it on. Nothing's gonna explode for sure.
Right.
You know, I think the instant
Right.
pot is a little intimidating for
Yeah.
absolute beginners, though. I find it's often popular with men. It kind of talks to the same aspect as the
Yeah, the
barbecue. You know,
tool. It's like a tool. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, it's
exactly. So
like a
they're both
power
good.
tool. Yeah.
Exactly, it's
No, I've
electric and it's
had people
dangerous.
take my instant pot class and they say, only my husband knew how to make this. Now I understand it. I mean, it really helps to understand the Instant Pot. I even have
Exactly.
one slide that shows like the Instant Pot was actually, I mean, the pressure cooker was created like in the 16th century, and
Yeah.
some old pictures of pressure cookers is just fun. And then once you kind of understand what the principle is, like you're
Yes.
heating water beyond the boiling point and it's pressing water into your food, you understand it conceptually. And then one of my students came up with the mnemonic LSD: make sure the lid's on, turn the knob to ceiling, and set the duration. LSD. So, you know, that once you kind of demystify the Instant Pot, it's good. But it is hard to do it yourself. So I agree. It's nice if you have just a little help to learn how the Instant Pot works, and just ask
Yes.
around if you don't ask friends, ask family. They will help you. Invite them over, and then you can have soup
Yes.
afterwards.
Yes, bringing the social more into
Yeah,
cooking too is one of my big wishes for humanity. I think just like we
I
used to
agree.
eat more together in bigger groups, we
Yeah.
used to cook more together, and now we're all cooking
Yes.
in our own little homes. But when we get that's why I love my
Yeah.
cooking club so much, because people are together and they see other people who care. And as that client was telling me, it's just not necessarily visible out there anymore that
Yes.
cooking is a
No, it's
thing that
true.
people do even when they're not paid to do it. Who knew?
No, yeah, no, it is amazing how much people eat out. And, like, oh, I was just so busy. I drove through and got food. It's like, come on. In this day and age, how much more information do you need to have about how bad fast food is for you? Oh,
Well,
so it's
speaking of
too bad.
information, tell me about your favorite recipe in your book. What is the one in there that you would live on forever and ever after if you had to?
Well, let's see. One of my favorite entrees is the baked penne with bell pepper and ricotta. So I make a ricotta out of cashews and tofu, and
Mm.
then water saute the bell peppers, which are an anti-inflammatory superstar, with mushrooms, and then bake up some whole wheat. In my case, I like whole wheat pasta best, whole wheat penne. And then you use some marinara and you swirl all that together and bake it. And I know people say comfort food, but it really is a very delicious casserole. And the nice thing is too, it keeps well, and so you can either freeze individual portions or just eat it for the rest of the week as well if you're not feeding a big family at first. And so that one, I just love all the flavors of that one.
That is delicious. I'm going to add a picture of that when
Yeah.
I put this together. I'll cut this bit.
Oh, great.
That sounds so delicious. I just love it. What's an easy place to start in the book for someone who has or who thinks they have no cooking skills? What can they do that's going to be super easy, bring them results right away, and give them that extra boost of confidence so that they can keep going from there?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. One of the things I did, one of the habits I wanted to form was eating berries every day. You just hear so many things about berries being so good for you, and they are anti inflammatory superstars. So, of course, in the middle of winter, there aren't any fresh berries to eat. And so, what I developed was what I call a daily habit smoothie bowl, which is to make a quadruple portion of blueberry smoothie, and then I freeze 3 portions for the next 3 mornings. But basically, it's in the breakfast chapter of the book. Blending some frozen blueberries. I like to use blueberries. You could use any with so some berries, a frozen banana, some flaxseed meal. So we're getting those omega 3s, and some ginger powder, and ginger is an anti-inflammatory superstar as well. So you have like 3 anti-inflammatory superstars in this very easy smoothie. You could add more water than the recipe calls for and just drink it. I like to eat it from a bowl, and you could add, things to it if you wanted some toppings. But I sometimes just have it on its own, and it's wonderful. The 3 next days, I have it right there, and I just little microwaving to thaw it out a little bit, but it's frozen there. And when I first started my berry habit, after a couple weeks, I actually noticed the difference. My digestion was better. I just felt better just from a half cup of berries every day. So that might be one that I think would be a good gateway recipe, as you might say.
Absolutely. I think it's a game changer. I see all of those studies sometimes that are, I call them single ingredient studies. Oh, we've
Yeah,
tested
yeah,
mangoes to see what happens to people's health. But
right.
inevitably, there's some kind of spectacular results on them. And sometimes you can think, maybe Mango Association or the Blueberry Association sponsored the study, and it's a little suspicious.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's just that people eat so little fruit and vegetables that as
Right.
soon as you up it by, even as you
Yeah.
just say, half a cup per day,
Yeah.
boom, you see a
Yeah.
difference.
You do
And it's
feel a difference.
amazing. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much. So just start
Right.
adding those beautiful things like your daily habit smoothie, have it as a bowl, drink it, whatever it takes. But
Yeah.
the benefits can be quite surprising.
Yeah. They can. Yeah, they can. So, I mean, and it's the same if you're having like a very unhealthy breakfast. I think you can get similar results if you start switching over to oatmeal with some flaxseed meal, with some berries on your oatmeal. If you're already eating
Yeah,
oatmeal, add a half cup of berries to that. But if you're not having a healthy breakfast, I think that's almost the easiest meal to start turning around your health and your inflammation, is to really make breakfast count. Some people would say start eating your vegetables at breakfast. Even if you don't, start eating your fruit and your whole grains at breakfast. And if you have an
right.
instant pot and you're ready to try steel cut oats, I have a couple of steel cut oat recipes in here as well. If you don't want to add the spices, just have plain steel cut oats, leave the spices out. And so you can, just start at breakfast. That's a great way to do it.
Even just cinnamon is a Ceylon
Yeah.
cinnamon is a pretty healthy spice to have, and most people will think it belongs with breakfast. It's not
Yeah,
going
it's
out
true.
there
Yeah.
with anything too
Yeah.
wild. You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, and it's piquing my curiosity, that you have volunteered for nutritionfacts.org for many years. In
Yeah.
case somebody is also curious about that, what kind of volunteer opportunities are there? What does that look like?
There are lots of volunteer opportunities. So, yeah, I started when they still were using outside writers and editors, and I was doing that. And then I started combing Dr. Greger's publications for social media quotes. That was one of my jobs at one point. And then I applied and passed the test to be a video reviewer. You just have to have an eagle eye for tiny mistakes. And so I'm on the video review team, which is a large team. But they definitely need translators. I know they're always on the lookout for translators, because I believe they've expanded to Germany and Spanish-speaking countries. I'm not sure what other languages they are mostly, or completely offering everything in. But they definitely need translators. I know in the past they've also asked people who can help find photos for their posts, or can have any video skills. They definitely, do so much with video. And of course, medical professionals or medical research professionals, they definitely, that's sort of the sacred volunteer group, the people who, really know this stuff and have training in that. But yeah, I think if you think about what they do, is they do videos, they do visual stuff, they do writing, and so anything, and they do also love when people will host a group to watch videos together, or if there are longer videos and you would agree to bring a group together to watch the video together, they're looking for volunteers for that as well.
There's so many opportunities, and it seems like something really rewarding to do. And
Yes, it
also, I
is.
find that just especially for people who may be lonely and they're isolated in their transition to plant-based and healthier eating,
Yeah.
having this reinforcement coming from people that you're volunteering with, and realizing that actually it's a really big movement. You just don't
Yes.
happen to be connected to anybody yet, but having that reinforcement, I'm sure, would be really valuable for
Yeah.
many people.
No, that's true. No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, it is a fairly young movement if you think about it. Some of those first clinical studies were done in the 80s and 90s. And, Forks Over Knives came out, I think it was 2012. But, really, we still are on the forefront. So, yes, it does feel lonely when, 90+% of the world is not aware of it, not eating this way, not convinced. And so you do have to find a community that actually sees it like you do, and sees the truth about so much of the diet that's going on around us. And so, yeah, I agree with you. The community aspect is really important.
One great way to meet your community is to take some courses. Tell me a little bit more about the courses you're teaching and how people can connect with you.
Yeah, so we're just finishing our spring courses. I'm taking the summer off from courses, but I'll be back in the fall. And I teach, online courses, usually a series of 5 classes, but you can choose to take just one or more classes if you don't want to take the whole series. So next in the fall, I'm doing the plant-based kitchen. So how to prep food, how to freeze food, what are all the equipment choices, what are all these newfangled ingredients that you might need to use. So it's going to be sort of a primer on all sorts of things and skills and tools in the kitchen. And so I have a website, graciousvegan.com, and there's a tab for my classes. So I'll have announcements about my classes. And also, if you go to graciousvegan.com, you can also sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every couple weeks. And so, of course, I'll announce my classes there as well. So, starting in the late summer, there'll probably be an announcement about the classes and how to sign up. And the classes are all over Zoom, so anybody can take them. And if you can't make it in your time zone, we usually start at 6 p.m. Pacific time. If you can't make it in your time zone, I always record it and send it to people who have signed up. So you can, take it with a little time lapse.
That sounds fantastic. And you also do one-on-one coaching, is that right?
Yes, yeah, through Portland Community College. Again, that's on my classes page. You can sign up for a bundle of 5 sessions, and we customize it to the person's needs. I have lots of handouts and lots of units that we can pursue, and then we customize it and meet for 45-minute sessions, either every week or every other week during that term.
That sounds fantastic. I'm so grateful for the work you do, spreading plant love, anti-inflammatory plant love all over the Pacific Northwest and the world. So thank you so much for being here today. There's going to be links to everything you talked about in the show notes. So I encourage people to connect with you and to connect with others to continue getting a river of nutrients, of happy, beneficial foods into their systems. I know it can be done, and I just appreciate so much that you're helping people get that started and keep it going. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your work too.
Thank you, Linda. We'll see you very soon in the Vegan Family Kitchen.
Okay, thank you. Take care.